Now, there's one other story that I think is really important to cover. And that is the fact that the Director of National Intelligence is lying and promoting an insane conspiracy theory. I need to acknowledge this, right? So they're calling it like a Russiagate, but essentially the ODNI is saying that the 2016, for those of you that with a calendar, that's 10 years ago, the Director of National Intelligence is alleging that 10 years ago, the Obama administration staged what they're calling a coup to politicize intelligence about Russia's 2016 election interference to what they say is subvert Donald Trump's election win. Now, this is absolutely insane stuff. And we're going to review exactly the evidence they claim to have found, and then we're going to contrast this with what's actually with actual reality, including a reality endorsed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio and dozens of other Senate Republicans. But we just have to call a spade here, right? And we're going to explain why, right? Because it's not that complex to figure out, okay? So, head of U.S. intelligence made, according to this article, which I think is spot on, made misleading claims about what the Obama administration officials said about Russian meddling in the 2016 election, accusing them of a conspiracy to politicize intelligence and asking the Justice Department to investigate them, which is funny because, as you guys recall, the Supreme Court said that in the conduct of his official duties, the president is immune from prosecution. So there's nothing you can do to President Obama. He's immune from everything. And they're saying, oh, we found all these documents. We're going to refer them to the Department of Justice for a criminal referral. So essentially saying maybe someone will be prosecuted, but it's somebody else's job to figure it out, which is code for this is a performance. Because again, if they actually found something, they would have already referred it to the DOJ, and the DOJ would be up there on the lectern saying, we are charging these people with this crime. And the fact that they're not, the fact that she says, well, I asked the Department of Justice to do something about it, maybe they will, says that one, this is not this should not be taken seriously, that this is some half-baked kind of scheme. And again, that if there was something real there that was chargeable under law, the Justice Department would be on the lectern talking about it. Right. But the core allegation is that they've declassified some correspondence that say that basically sort of like that the then DNI said analysis indicated, and the contradictions like baked into it, said the analysis indicated there's no indication of a Russian threat to directly manipulate the actual vote count. And that Russia was probably not trying to influence, so something is excluded here, not trying to influence the election by using cyber means. And that Russian criminal actors did not impact election results by conducting malicious cyber activities against election infrastructure. Now, you may notice something that... Sorry, I went on a run this morning, got to rehydrate. You may notice something. There's a bunch of words there, like election infrastructure and manipulating vote counts, which, to be clear, no investigation, and they looked into it, has ever found that Russia manipulated vote counts. They sort of tried to hack election infrastructure. They did some probing. They never really got in. The election infrastructure is pretty secure. That never happened. No vote count manipulation, right? Which is also true, by the way. Remember that Fox News lost $1 billion lawsuit because they brought on people, talking heads, and allowed their commentators to say that the election in 2020 had been stolen from Donald Trump, that voting machines had been manipulated through some kind of cockamamie scheme. They paid $1 billion because it was liable to say that. So again, the fact that this is coming from the government means that they can say anything they want and they won't lose $1 billion defamation lawsuit. Fox News, not so much. But they point out that these sort of cherry-picked quotes confirming what we already knew, which is Russia never hacked election machines, that officials across the government have been consistent in public remarks, sworn testimony, declassified documents. Russia never hacked the voting machines. And so it's hard to argue that there was a coup against Donald Trump because, one, this was initiated after the election. So what's the coup, right? And the ODNI report pretends that the intelligence community didn't actually find that Russia used hackers to hack the DNC, which is a crime, then sent the email communications data, laundered them through WikiLeaks, and spread them on a social media campaign and interjected a lot of fictional documents to undermine support for Hillary Clinton. And this is just absolutely stupid, right? So here, I want to show you guys how we know this. So let's assess some of this evidence. These are press releases by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. This is nonsense. So again, this is their own perspective of this. They also rely on cherry-picked quotes. You may notice what this doesn't have. There is no documents available. It's only a memo. They say they're releasing documents, but they never actually link to the documents. Do you see how this is intrinsically first a problem? Because if they did link to the documents themselves, we would find the same thing, which is that they've been remarkably consistent. Right? She says, after the election, talking points were prepared for the DNI, who said, quote, foreign adversaries did not use cyber attacks on election infrastructure to alter the presidential outcome. Wow. That's true. That has been consistently true. No votes were ever changed in 2016. Right? And then they made further discussions about Russia. And they said, were there other tools that Moscow used and actions it took to influence the 2016 election? Not to hack infrastructure, to influence it. And they said, ODNI is going to lead this effort, right? But the election results had already happened. And Obama already said Trump's going to take office. So where's the part with the coup? And then Obama officials said that Russia has attempted through cyber means to interfere and, if not actively influence, the outcome of an election. Yeah. These are two different things. Hacking voting machines and engaging in systematic social media driven manipulation of the public are radically different things. They are not the same. Okay? And here, right? Look, here's another leak or a press release from absolutely insane. More insanity from Tulsi Gabbard, essentially confirming what we already knew. First off, she says that an oversight report said that the interest that Putin didn't want to pick a particular candidate. He just wanted to undermine faith in the U.S. democratic process and had no preference of a certain candidate. And she adds, Putin chose not to leak the most damaging compromising material on Hillary Clinton, preferring to use it to weaken Clinton after what they thought would be an inevitable Clinton presidency. But a lot of that was like fake. And again, clearly not necessary given that Hillary Clinton lost that election. There's also stuff where Brennan and IC misled lawmakers by referencing the Steele dossier to assess Russian plans and intention, which sort of vaguely suggested the dossier had intelligence value. Now, I want to point out this thing with the Steele dossier, okay? It was fake, right? But the only way to know it is fake is to run it down. And that, believe it or not, is the job of the CIA. If you say, is this fake? You want the CIA to go yes or no. But also, Russia creates fake things all the time. And if you know what fake things they are making, you can use that to infer their intent. This is basic intelligence analysis. This is one of the reasons on this channel that we look at sources like TASS, the official Russian state media outlet, the South China Morning Post, occasionally even RT. The reason is not because we think those things are factually true, but because it tells us what does the Russian government want the perspective to be? What is their side, or what do they want the English-speaking world to see from them? And that itself is important. Now, you can all read this. You can Google it yourself, right? But I want to point this out because this is really important. This is the Select Committee on Intelligence of the United States Senate. This was published, by the way, guys, during the Trump administration, investigated from 2017 until 2020. So solely while Trump was in office, during Trump's time in office, chaired by current Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The document, right, reviewed over 1 million documents, classified and unclassified, right? No probe into this matter has been more exhaustive. That is what Marco Rubio says. It is the most comprehensive description to date of Russia's activities and the threat they posed. Now, it was released in like 6 volumes. The first volume deals with exactly what we talked about. Volume 1, Russian efforts against election campaign infrastructure. These are voting machines, the infrastructure, the core story, right? The executive summary, the most important points up, the bottom line up front, right? There's that Russia tried to exploit some election stuff. The committee has no evidence that any votes were changed or that any voting machines were manipulated. Wow. So then wait, that's what the ODNI said was a big, awesome leak, a huge to-do, a big fucking deal. But what? We knew that 6 years ago? Marco Rubio told us that? But wait, there's another volume. Wait, this volume's different. This says Russia's use of social media and active measures campaign and interference. Do you mean to tell me that Russia didn't hack voting machines but may have interfered in other ways? Why, what a shocking turn of events. Who could have possibly understood this? Well, obviously not Tulsi Gabbard. And let's look at the findings. Their bottom line up front, because all government documents do this. Why Marco Rubio and his committee found that the Internet Research Agency, by the way, this is the Russian military intelligence wing that engaged in the social media manipulation of 2016, sought to influence the 2016 presidential election by harming Hillary Clinton's chance of success and supporting Donald Trump at the direction of the Kremlin. Wow. Huh. Now, you may be asking yourself a simple question. Why would the director of national intelligence just make shit the fuck up when claim there was some kind of major story, some kind of big coup? Why would that be? Why do you think she would suddenly need to manufacture this kind of, to do? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. There could be any number of reasons why a story would need to be invented to distract the public from something else going on with the United States president. Your guess, again, is as good as mine.